Welcome along to the weekend Matchbook Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by Mark O'Haire, Adrian Clarke this Thursday morning, and we're fresh off a best bet double. Mark, the beware the early kickoff. I still think that applies in the Premier League, but I think for now we've given it the kick in the Champions League. The reason being, you both went for the Tuesday early kickoff for best bets, and they both won relatively comfortably, I'd say, by the end of it.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, Lazio absolutely dominated Celtic for the most part, but kind of contrived to miss a hatful of opportunities, and then Ciro Immobile comes on in the last half an hour and turns the tide and shows his class. And Lazio eventually winning quite comfortably for me. And as you know, I think we both kind of promoted Shakhtar Donetsk on the show, and they did the business for Adrian. Unfortunately, my sort of selection, my more aggressive play on Shakhtar and over 1.5 didn't come in, but they were good value for it. So nice when you're sort of counting your winnings on Tuesday before the 8 p.m. games kick off in the Champions League. It's rare that occurs, but on your sort of early kickoff nonsense, Dan, I kind of going to contest you on that weekly until you present some evidence to suggest that what you're saying is absolutely right. It's just, for me, it's a load of Twitter nonsense. So
that sounds like
I'll keep battling back against it.
Yeah, and I'll keep fighting the good fight for the listeners and viewers that are well aware of that early kickoff curse. Adrian, you're showing your capabilities outside of the Premier League. You went Shakhtar the next best bet, and despite Mark putting it up, you stuck to your gun, saying, "No, this is my best bet in the card." And
I felt it was. Yeah, I felt, and it was more of an anti-Antwerp stance, really. You know, they were already out. There was a lot of motivation for Shakhtar to get the job done, so that was good. We had some winners right across the board. I think in the Champions League, I was really pleased with my Dortmund plus half a goal selection over in Milan. They lived up to the sort of billing that I'd given them, which is reassuring. But I think that they've, in the Champions League, they've been seriously impressive. Borussia Dortmund, the matches against Newcastle, they were so professional, and they went and did a job on Milan as well. So I was pleased to put that one up.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into the Premier League teams' results as we go through the four marquee games, which will include Arsenal, Wolves, Newcastle versus Manchester United, Chelsea versus Brighton, and Manchester City versus Tottenham. If you're watching the YouTube stream, really appreciate all the kind words via comments there or on social. But do hit that like button, takes 2 seconds, makes a massive difference and gets our content out to a wider audience. And do check out the Match with Bet and Exchange. We'll be going through a lot of prices here that will invariably be the best price on the Odds Checker UK grid. Let's get to it, and we will start with Arsenal versus Wolves here. This is a 3 o'clock kickoff, no early kickoff to talk about this week, which is a relief to both the host and Mark O'Haire. Arsenal 1.32, Wolves available at 12.5. The draw is 6.0. Both teams to score. No is heavily favoured here at 173, and the Asian handicap line sees Wolves get 1.5 goal start at above even money, and 2.5 is the total here, but that is shaded towards the over. So the market expecting a comfortable Arsenal win. Mark, has this market moved much in the last few days, particularly after last night's 6-0 result? 5-0.
No, not really. It's kind of where it was when I started doing my prep on Wednesday on this match, and Arsenal top of the Premier League for the first time since surrendering their lead in the title run in last season. Kind of caught me a little bit by surprise. I'm not saying Arsenal have gone under the radar, but I was kind of surprised when they went to the top of the table so far this season, and that might be down to the fact that I'm not saying they've completely shapeshifted, but the team that kind of excited us and enthralled us at this stage last season with their sort of domineering and engaging sort of style, it's not been quite as attractive on the eye, shall we say, so far this season. Injuries haven't helped, of course, and the extra workload of the Champions League necessitates a bit of a switch up in style, I think, at times. But we've seen a bit more dog about Arsenal, and that's kind of been characterised in their away wins at kind of Palace, Everton, and Brentford last weekend. And I also noted in the numbers that they've kept the most clean sheets and the fewest goals conceded in the Premier League this season. So, it's been quite good so far. In terms of expected points, they're just behind City and Newcastle, neck and neck really with Liverpool, second to City in expected goals process. And they actually top a relatively new stat called Field Tilt, which kind of measures successful touches or successful passes really in the final third and kind of gives you an idea of a team's territorial dominance. So, But this game is at the Emirates, and as we saw midweek, Arsenal can cut loose and show their teeth when required. And we do tend to see, I guess, what neutrals enjoy from Arsenal more so at the Emirates than when they play away from home. And this game comes under sort of two categories, which we've touched on routinely in the past: Arsenal at home as odds-on favourites, and Arsenal at home to bottom half teams. Because no matter the manager, no matter the year, no matter the squad, it just tends to produce profit consistently. And under Arteta alone, they've got a 74% win rate at home to bottom half teams, scoring 2.49 goals per game in those fixtures. So I've got no qualms with the Arsenal price. I think my numbers pretty much translate to exactly where the market is right now. But I did feel that perhaps both teams to score was slightly big. It's odds against here. And obviously that flies in the face of Arsenal's underlying metrics at home. At the Emirates, they do have the best underlying defensive metrics in the Premier League. But I just think Wolves have the capacity to create something here and sort of not be kind of just swatted aside as easily as, say, Lens were in midweek. It's a quick turnaround for Arsenal from Wednesday night to Saturday afternoon. Wolves have now scored in every 12 Premier League matches since the opening day at Man United, where they really should have scored. Admittedly, these matches have taken place at Molineux, but even still, they've given City, Liverpool, Spurs, Villa and Newcastle plenty of problems. And I just think stylistically, this match might follow a similar sort of pattern, actually. We've seen kind of Hwang in exceptional form in terms of creating and finishing opportunities. Matheus Cunha is starting to kind of impress more consistently. They do have that rest and preparation advantage leading into this. And I think it's still worth pointing out that go back to the start of last season, Arsenal has still only kept 6 clean sheets at the Emirates in 26 Premier League matches. 73% of those fixtures saw both teams score, including 5 of 7 in the EPL this season. So I thought odds against on both teams to score caught my eye. But the most obvious play here is to kind of combine that with the Arsenal to win price, which boosts them from 1.32 to 3.3, which is an enormous leap, I think. And I know Adrian's got a similar sort of angle, which would probably be the more obvious selection. But I thought that leap was probably just a bit too big to turn down, really, considering this has got a 54% win rate since the beginning of last season at the Emirates. So Arsenal to win and both teams to score at 3.3.
Okay, this seems quite a bit of a leap from 1.32, as Mark alluded to there. Adrian, over to you, and a little bit on some of those defensive stats that Mark alluded to. My question to you is, I guess Arteta would have said this: we're going to put more focus on defensive, be more solid to beat this year, or tougher to beat this year. But I guess maybe injuries have made it a bit more extreme for him to have to do it, or do you reckon this was always the plan to be as tough to beat as possible?
Yeah, I think that was what was missing, wasn't it? It was all a little bit wild and chaotic. It was a thrilling ride last season, but thrilling rides don't often end up with titles and trophies. And I think to win trophies, you do need a solid defence, and you need to have a platform to build from. And we saw with the City game, you know, Arsenal against Manchester City when it won 1-0. You know, limiting Manchester City to 4 shots was an incredible achievement, and it shows how far they've come. Declan Rice is massive, just phenomenal. Everybody at Emirates Stadium is thinking, how did we get this guy for only £105 million? You know, that's how big an influence he has had on the team so far. And with Saliba, to my mind, the best central defender in the Premier League now, alongside Gabriel, it's a pretty good platform. So that makes a big difference. But there's also less risk, more control. And that's the reason why they've kept things tighter. I can see exactly where Mark's coming from on the both teams to score angle, by the way. What a price jump that is. Matchbooks analysts might need to have a look at that. I don't know, but it's quite the jump. Because Wolves have scored in, like Mark said, 12 successive Premier League games since that defeat against United on the opening weekend. So Wolves are positive. They'll go for it, I think, under Gary O'Neill. I think home or away, not gung-ho, but they'll be positive. They've got a lot of pace in their side. The players that Mark picked out are in good nick. And, yeah, they are capable of scoring. But, yeah, what we saw from Arsenal last night was fantastic. First time, I believe, that the front 5 all played together. So you had Jesus, Saka, Martinelli, Ødegaard and Havertz. First time that they've started a game, and they'd all scored by half time, which was terrific. And, you know, Lens are a good defensive team. Don't give many goals away, but absolutely cut them open for fun. So can they do it again? Well, yeah, I think they can. Wolves are open, aren't they? The payoff for being more positive this season is that they're clearly more open at the back. Only 4 teams have faced more shots than Wolves in the Premier League, and only Burnley, Sheffield United and Bournemouth have conceded more goals than Wolves as well. So you've got to fancy Arsenal to get at least a couple here. I'm looking at Arsenal and over 2.5 goals. That's my angle. Yeah, both teams to score is a great shout, but obviously Arsenal have improved defensively, as I've just been talking about. So this would be the safer pick potentially. 6 or 7 home games this season, over 2.5. This is amazing. Since the start of last season at Emirates Stadium, there have been 26 Premier League matches, and 23 of them have gone over 2.5 goals. So nothing safe in this business, but that's a strong stat, and it would support the notion that there'll be over 2.5 in this one. And with Arsenal such hot favourites, just couple them together and it comes out just underneath even money, which I think is absolutely backable. One other stat I wanted to share with you is the different scorers that Arsenal have had so far this season. Jorginho got one last night. It took the tally to 15 different goal scorers already. We're only in November. And I had a little sneaky look at Liverpool and Manchester City, just because I thought, well, that kind of breadth is a real plus. You're not reliant on 1 or 2 players to carry you. Liverpool have had 10 different goal scorers in all competitions, and Manchester City 8. So, yeah, Arsenal really are sharing the love.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely the safer option. Arsenal over 2.5 goals. I'm feeling similar to Wolves, Tottenham a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to take the leap of faith with Mark. Just that big price. Arsenal, both teams to score, yes, 3.3. And I went 3 out of 4 on the Champions League podcast myself, picking Dortmund half a goal and Galatasaray quarter of a goal. So I'm a man in form. I haven't always been picking these bets, but I'm a man in form. So let's go with it.
You've been outstanding, Dan. Yeah, outstanding.
Thank you very much. It takes a bit of skill here to listen to both cases and then ultimately pick the right one, I hope. So we will go to what should have been an early kickoff, but has been switched to 8 o'clock Saturday. I think BT or TNT have a couple of these they can do. That's the reason I have so far. Anyway, Newcastle even money to beat Manchester United, who are 395. The draw is 385. Both teams to score. And normal market here for the Premier League this season. Yes, 171 favoured. Asian handicap line. United get half a goal head start at 196, and the goal line is 2.5 and 181. So look, Adrian, a little bit on Newcastle. They were actually done by that VAR decision at the end. But I'm looking at it's definitely a team we haven't got right in the Champions League this season. In fairness, Newcastle, we always seem to be on the wrong side of them. But in fairness, the team they had out there, the performance they put in, and I know PSG had the chances, but they'll go into this game with confidence, particularly given the extra days rest as well.
Yeah, they should do. Yeah, they're a hard team to sort of pin down, aren't they? Newcastle United. Yeah, they are still pretty depleted. You know, that's why they got a 17-year-old in the side who did really, really well in the game, Miley. But yeah, that was a good performance, a good collective team performance. Really, really resilient. Obviously, they did give up a lot of chances, robbed at the end. I mean, that's a disgraceful decision there. Absolutely outrageous. So, yeah, I felt a little bit sorry for them there. Not too sorry, obviously, after what happened in the Arsenal game. But yeah, they were hard done by for sure. They'll take confidence from the fact that they went to the Parc des Princes and were so competitive. They'll take massive confidence from the fact that they obliterated Chelsea last weekend by 4-1. Yeah, so I think the atmosphere will be quite lively here. Newcastle fans will feel a little bit sense of injustice, and they'll want to beat Manchester United. And I think they'll really fancy their side's chances of beating them as well. Isak, obviously leading the line, good player. Anthony Gordon is having a real breakthrough season as well. I think those 2 players certainly have the tools, the skill set to hurt the Manchester United back four. You know, I'm thinking of Isak with that slippery movement and pace in and around the United centre halves. I think that's a problem. And Gordon has got that real pace, hasn't it? That directness to hurt the United fullbacks. So I think that they can score goals here. 6 wins, just the 1 loss at home so far this season in the Premier League. Real late turnaround against Liverpool. So it's been a very hard place for visiting teams to go. Only 4 goals conceded as well at St James's so far this season, and we know that United have been very low scoring in the Premier League, not so much in the Champions League, where they seem to score loads and let in even more. But yeah, in the Premier League, they've not exactly been that exciting going forward, Manchester United, and they won't find it easy here. I've got to side with Newcastle. I've just sort of outlined the reasons. I've given the numbers on their home form, and at even money, they're very, very backable, and they're up against a team that have a great name, Manchester United. Of course they do. And you look at the form table and you think, oh, United are back, but they still haven't beaten anyone in the top half of the table yet. They've had 4 losses from 4 against teams inside the top 10. They've conceded 11 goals in those 4 games. So whenever they've come up against anybody decent so far, that they have let in goals. No control, obviously, in Galatasaray. I missed the bulk of that match, but, it was pretty wild. From 2-0 up, you should not be giving any points away. Rode their luck a little bit at Everton, of course, giving up a few chances. So, yeah, I'm finding it hard to find too many reasons to support Manchester United, despite their little turnaround in the Premier League, just because of the opposition that they've been up against. This feels a very winnable home game for Newcastle United. Under the lights, it's going to be a fantastic atmosphere, and I expect the home side to get the job done. So, yeah, Newcastle at even money.
Okay, yeah, even money. And Mark, they're watching the Amazon Prime documentary over the summer. There's a bit of a rivalry brewing between Newcastle and Manchester United, given the Carabao Cup and then the celebrations from Newcastle when they beat them in a Premier League game. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that I reckon this, come 8 o'clock on Saturday, as Adrian touched on, it's going to be some atmosphere in St. James's Park.
Yeah, it will be. And, I've got very much a similar thought process, similar notes to Adrian on this match too. And I too want to be with Newcastle. I do think it's a little bit more difficult to select them at evens, just based on the schedule. The concerns here are obviously the injuries and the fatigue in the camp after what was an exhausting game in midweek at PSG. The last 20 minutes, they did look out on their feet. They didn't make any substitutions either, and the way in which that match ended may have hurt morale. I know that the decision to award the penalty was comical, but there was another decision earlier in the game, I think, when Hakimi went down, which looked a much more likely penalty. And in fairness, every other day of the week, PSG don't just get something out of that game, they probably win it based on the chances they created. So in terms of the actual result, I don't think Newcastle can have too many complaints. But the flip side is Newcastle have played and battered Chelsea last Saturday. They then played in Paris on Tuesday and returned home for this on Saturday night. Whereas in contrast, United were nowhere near as good as a 3-0 suggested at Everton on Sunday. Then they had to go to Istanbul on Wednesday before this game on Saturday night. So in short, Newcastle's 3rd game in a week, 2 of which were at home. For United, this is their 3rd game in 6 days, all of which were away, including a trip to Turkey. So the home team should, in theory, have the rest and preparation advantage as well as home advantage. So I think there's enough for me to trust in Newcastle here, because that starting 11 is still very strong. At St. James's Park, they've been superb, second only to Liverpool in expected points, 6 wins from 7. It was a real asset of theirs last season, and they've been the better team in recent meetings with United too, as well. And then from a United perspective, even before the Galatasaray game, I was nowhere near being in a sort of trustworthy place with them. That match was just absolute chaos. One of the games of the season, really, but still huge question marks over them. Mentioned that game against Everton last week was far from convincing. You score a wonder goal and a penalty to kind of put yourselves in a positive position, but Everton had more than enough opportunities to get something out of that game. And I think it tells you everything. That 3-0 win only brought their goal difference to a flat 0 this season. It was their first win of the season by more than a 1-goal margin. Almost all of their victories in the Premier League have come with a massive asterisk, whether it's late goals, elements of fortune, just underwhelming and unconvincing. And their record, as Adrian says, against top half, 4 defeats from 4. Their record away to top 9 finishers under Ten Hag, 1 point from 10 games, 9 defeats, which is horrendous. They're ranked 10th in expected goals process, returning a negative process, I should say. They dropped to 13th when viewing sort of away figures. I've got them 11th in expected points overall, dropped down to 14th when playing away. They've lost the XG battle when you exclude penalties in 7 of 13 Premier League matches, including 4 of 6 away. It's not pretty, whichever way you want to look at this. So more than happy to oppose them, even with that kind of allowance for Newcastle being down to the bare bones. They proved against Chelsea last week they can rise to the occasion, did so again in midweek with a valiant display. So this price has moved since we looked at things originally. It was around 2.06, but I think even at evens, it's worth a go.
Okay, even money for Newcastle. The selection from Mark and Adrian. We will move to Chelsea versus Brighton Sunday, 2:00. This isn't on UK TV, unfortunately. Chelsea harshly done by because last week's game against Newcastle also wasn't on UK TV. We got Chelsea at 174, Brighton 4.8. Clipped in a little bit this morning. Draw 4.4. Both teams to score, yes, 163. You can see a lot of goals in this game. Brighton plus 3/4 of a goal. Head start at 2.02, and the goal line is 3.5. Mark, Brighton, look, their goals following them all the way around, and that it's in those goals markets as a result. So where are you sort of looking? Are you looking at either side here, or do you still think there's value in getting goals on side here?
Bit of both, in all honesty. I talk about trust with Manchester United or the lack thereof, and the same has to apply here to Chelsea. At times, they have looked like a side who are starting to evolve into something dangerous, something exciting, something potentially quite powerful and prolific. But second guessing when we're going to see that is almost impossible, because they can make a complete mockery of those kind of comments by chucking in a horrendously bad performance as they did last week at Newcastle. And Pochettino was quite right to be hugely critical of his team, of his players. The defending was monumentally bad at times, and the errors were just beyond basic. And they were comfortably beaten. The lack of discipline as well came to the fore. I've got Reece James and Mark Cucurella suspended for this weekend. There still is talent in that squad. They'll still be able to field a very competitive 11. But that's back-to-back games now. They've conceded 4 or more goals. And yes, they were good against City. Yes, they were good against Arsenal. But then the Brentford game was dreadful. The Spurs performance was puzzling at times. They were pummeled early doors in that match away at Tottenham. So for me, the jury is still definitely out there. I know they've been returning some decent underlying metrics, but they've lost 5 of 13 Premier League games, conceding 20 goals. Their only win in 7 at Stamford Bridge came against Luton. They're winless in 5 against Brighton head-to-head. So I wouldn't be touching them at short price, kind of odds-on favourites here. Not at all. I know it's been driven by underlying metrics, and Chelsea are above Brighton in terms of XG and expected points process, but this feels trappy for me with Chelsea. So initially I was looking at Brighton +1 on the Asian handicap around 175, but I think at a bigger price, the more appealing play here is to back overs and BTTS at 187. I think for me that's very appealing, considering both teams have scored in all of Brighton's Premier League matches. That's 13. Those matches have produced 3.92 goals per game. They're ranked 3rd for shots on target, but they're also in the top half for shots on target conceded. So this season alone, they have won 3-1 3 times. They've also lost by that scoreline once. They've won 4-1 twice. They've won 3-2 once. They've also been thumped 6-1. And 6 of their 7 against the top 12 have featured 4 goals or more. They do take risks, especially in their own penalty area. They want to almost cause you a bit of panic in your final third. And they've just got this kind of relentless rotation policy because of the, schedule with the Europa League, that you just don't know who's going to play. It's very hard to predict the formation, the system, the personnel. But they are, for me, still quite comfortably the Premier League's great entertainers. And it's a handicap ready for them to have to go to Athens in midweek, which again pushes me more towards the goals as opposed to the handicap, as is the suspension of Lewis Dunk too for that needless red card. So there's injuries in the Brighton's camp too, worth noting. They have got probably about a dozen players injured or major doubts for this weekend too. So, but we do know under De Zerbi, they're still going to be aggressive. They're still going to be front foot. They still will create opportunities, and they'll do similar for the opposition too. So I think this game could be fun. So therefore, I'm going to back the overs and BTTS at 187.
Okay, yeah, and we're recording this before Brighton's Europa League game, which you feel that still be relatively full strength as much as De Zerbi can be in the Europa League, given that they do want to not only finish second but maybe top in that group. Adrian, you're siding with Brighton here ultimately.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Mark said. I've got to say, you can't trust Chelsea. That's the issue. Look, Stamford Bridge it's not been a happy hunting ground for quite some time now. And this season, despite all the positivity, despite the good draws against Liverpool, Arsenal and City, they've had 7 home games and won 1. Luton Town. So, they're not used to winning at home. When you look at their record against top 11 sides this year, home or away, no clean sheets in 8 games. So you've got to fancy them to concede 1, possibly 2 here against a really attack-minded Brighton side, who are short at the minute in terms of personnel. But I do think James and Cucurella's absence is pretty big, actually, especially when you consider the strength of Brighton in those wide areas with the rampaging fullbacks and the attacking midfielders that do damage from the flanks. So I think that Brighton love these games. They love it at Emirates. They love going to the big teams and trying to put on a show. And I think that on the back of that hammering they took at Newcastle, in the absence of those couple of key defenders, I think there'll be a fragility, certainly a mental fragility within the Blues ranks that Brighton could play on. So, if they can get themselves in front early doors, Brighton, it could become very, very uncomfortable. They're a bit unreliable this season, Brighton. Like they'll chuck in the odd non-performance, but they are unbeaten in 4, 3 draws. And of course, they won at Nottingham Forest last time out. They've won at Man United, they've won at Wolves, they've won at Forest, as I just said, Brighton. So they can go anywhere and pick up wins. I also think stylistically, Brighton don't like it against teams that sit off and counter against them. But Chelsea won't do that. Chelsea will want the ball and they'll go at Brighton. And Brighton are brilliant, aren't they, at turning the ball over and then hurting teams that might leave space in behind. So I think that's another plus for them, although Chelsea will in turn press them too, no doubt. But yeah, overs is a good shout. I think that's a very good call. I'm often a bit reticent to go over 3.5 just because it feels such a stretch, but that wouldn't surprise me in this game. But yeah, all things considered, I wanted to oppose Chelsea, and I think that to get Brighton plus 3/4 of a goal at 2.02 it is good. So a draw, we get paid out in full. Obviously, a Brighton win, we get paid out in full. And if Chelsea do win by 1 goal, which I think is obviously the most likely. I mean, again, I reiterate, 7 home games, 1 win against Luton. If they do win by 1 goal, we get, we only lose half our stake. So it's, I think this
Are you a little bit concerned by the injuries at all, Adrian?
Lewis Dunk is one. Yeah, I think Lewis Dunk is such a key player for them. Yeah.
I'll just read out the players who are almost definitely missing this weekend, which is kind of what put me off being massively behind you. Estupiñán, Lamptey, Fati, Welbeck, Enciso, Dahoud, Webster, Dunk, Milner, Mitoma, and March.
Yeah, they are missing some good players. They are missing a lot of good players, but I think they've still got enough to get a result with Chelsea, which, it doesn't tell you that much about my faith in the Blues. I just don't think they're very good at the back. And I think that no matter which team Roberto De Zerbi puts out, they will score goals. I just got faith in them to do it. But yeah, that is a lot of good players missing, I have to say. So look, if Daniel wants to go over 2.5 and both teams to score, totally fine with me.
No, the deal breaker for me is Evan Ferguson not being on that list. So we will lock in Brighton plus 3/4 of a goal head start. And that's half your stake on half plus half, and then half your stake on plus 1.0. Asian handicaps.
It's always fun to oppose Chelsea as well, isn't it? Obviously, unless you're a Chelsea fan, but yeah, it's an
interesting one. I do think
it feels good to want them to get beaten.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is something. He's building something there, Pochettino. Whether he gets the time or not remains to be seen, but it's definitely not in the short term. We will move to Manchester City versus Tottenham. It's a disappointing 6.1 out of 10. This, just given the undercard, is West Ham versus Crystal Palace, which is nowhere near the best in the 2 o'clock. But that's our Super Sunday rating locked in. Man City, as producer Ryan told me, the same price as Arsenal to beat Wolves to beat Spurs, if that makes sense. They're 132. Tottenham 10.0. The draw is 6.8. 170 or 1.7 is the both teams to score yes angle. The Asian handicap line. See Spurs get 1 3/4 of a goal head start at 189, and the total is 3.5. So Adrian, take this away. I thought Tottenham were very good against Aston Villa, and I don't agree with the narrative that they weren't playing well, but it's 3 defeats in a row, having taken the lead in each of those 3 games.
Oh, they will go for it. Postecoglou won't change. He said that. He's a man of conviction, isn't he? And I think that's suicidal when you go to the Etihad, I have to say. I think that if there's one fixture you should change for, and maybe Mikel Arteta's learned this the hard way, it is against City. I think you have to be a little bit more pragmatic because they're so good going forward. So, but look, Spurs, I do expect to play in the same way, which means they'll cause the home side problems. No doubt about that. More than capable of scoring goals at the Etihad. They've scored 5, Tottenham, under Conte at the Etihad in their last 2 visits. So, this is a place where they can get in amongst it, turn the ball over and really hurt the home team. Primarily because City have been quite susceptible to counters. And that was Spurs' thing, wasn't it, under the previous regime. But here, if they're brave enough to go and try and press City, which I think they will be, then I think they can nick the ball in good areas and maybe score a goal. They're very, very. They create so much, don't they? They've had more open play shots than anybody. More than Liverpool, who are second, City in third. So yeah, I think backing Spurs to score, home or away, does make sense. But this is City at home, and Haaland against a high line just feels absolutely madness. I can picture it now, and it's making me want to sort of triple captain Haaland in the fantasy league this weekend because of that line, and because they've got no Van de Ven, they've got no Romero. That's it's a lot of pace that's taken out of that defence, and I can just see the ball coming into Foden or Alvarez on a little triangle into them, flick it down the middle for Haaland to run in behind. So many teams are getting in behind this Spurs team. I think City could really cut loose in this game. I'm going to go City to win and both teams to score. I was tempted at the overs. 9 of 13 for both clubs have come in over 2.5 this season. With Spurs games, 8 of 13 have landed both teams to score. 9 of 13, sorry, for Spurs. Both teams have scored. And 8 of 13 for Manchester City, who have kept far fewer clean sheets than you might imagine, just 5 across the season so far. Spurs have still scored in every game. City just the one blank away at Arsenal, of course. So, yeah, I see nothing but a thrilling end-to-end attack kind of game. And in that scenario, I've got to back City to outscore Tottenham Hotspur. So, I feel quite confident, and I think the price is decent too on this particular selection.
Okay, yeah, Mark, you mentioned Brighton injuries. Tottenham injuries probably nearly top them, just given the players they have out.
Yeah, for sure. It shouldn't be as bad this week, I don't believe. Obviously, Bentancur's injury means he'll be missing, but they'll get Basuma back from suspension, and Sarr will be available as well. So perhaps the central midfield area will be a little bit stronger this time around. Of course, they played Villa without a holding midfielder and a defence made up of 4 fullbacks. And clearly the defence is still going to be an issue. He doesn't trust Eric Dyer because he doesn't lack the pace to play in that high line. So we might get Emerson Royale and Ben Davies together as a frightening prospect against that Man City.
Well, Mark, so I say, do you know this right foot, left foot axis? I tweeted this as well. I was like, you have your right foot and left footer at centre back, but at what cost? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me, to be honest. I know I've not come close to playing the game at the top level, but surely professional footballers in the Premier League should be able to play with both feet regardless. So it doesn't make a huge sense to me. But that's a separate conversation. But I mean, from a Spurs perspective, I agree. I thought they were very, very good last week against Aston Villa, especially in that first half. They could have scored a bucket load of goals, but they didn't take their chances, and they eventually paid for it. So I think that was probably more down to the personnel and the team structure, really, and having to bring in Brian Hill and Giovanni Lo Celso from the cold. And Lo Celso played very well, of course he did. But as soon as Bentancur went off, they did lose complete control of that midfield, and things kind of escalated from there. And that would be a concern, but we know Spurs are fantastic to watch, and they will engage Man City. I expect them to create chances. I expect them to cause problems, and Adrian's already touched on it. But City have played 9 matches across all competitions at the Etihad. The bet that Adrian has selected, the City win and BTTS, has landed in 5 of those. 6 of those 9 games have seen BTTS. And I was quite taken aback by this. But over the last 17 Manchester City matches across all comps, they've only managed 3 clean sheets. Bournemouth, Young Boys, Red Star, Sheffield United, they've all scored against Man City. And Spurs have scored in every game under Ange. So fancy them to do so again here. I guess that I've got not a huge amount to say really on Man City. I was kind of a bit surprised at the 2 benches last week against Liverpool. You know, Liverpool were able to bring on Luis Diaz, Gakpo, Gravenberch, Harvey Elliott, and Endo. And they had Gomez and Konate on the bench. City didn't make any subs, and you looked at the bench, and there was very little to choose from there. So things have improved since then. Grealish is back from illness. Stones has had another week. Kovacic is back as well. But yeah, I just think stylistically, this game should suit a City side who have actually failed to win 4 of their last 7 Premier League matches. But this feels like it should be a bit of an open goal for them based on how Tottenham are going to approach this match. So yeah, quite happy to kind of follow Adrian in here by backing Man City to win and BTTS. Again, a huge leap. City, what are they, 130, 132 to beat Spurs? It was 260 for them to beat Spurs with BTTS.
Okay, yeah, 258 as the guy said, City and both teams to score, and full recap will be available on Matchbook Insights or insights.matchbook.com. Adrian, Leicester City still top of the league in the Championship. Not that the wheels are falling off, but maybe Ipswich being a little bit close to them. They just seem to have come back to not the pack again, but they're just stuttering a little bit from their sensational start at the start of the season.
Yeah, definitely are.
Really struggle against West Brom.
Well, it's a tough game. It's a really, really tough game. West Bromwich Albion are in good form. Beat Ipswich last weekend, of course, at home by 2-0 West Brom. I was in Cardiff on Tuesday night for their win. It was a 1-0 win at Cardiff City, a team that have been in good form themselves. So, yeah, they are the clean sheet kings. 9 they've had, Carlos Corberan's side, in the Championship so far this season. They do not give a lot away. They've got a very experienced back four, quite a defensive central midfield, and then ahead, you know, they've got good attacking midfielders and forwards that can go out and win them the game. So I think that there'll be a tough nut for Leicester City to crack. They've had so much of the ball, Leicester, but have struggled a little bit to score the goals that their domination maybe warrants. A lot of times in recent weeks, they've scored 1 goal rather than 2, 3, 4. So yeah, they're sort of scratching around a little bit more. I was looking at both teams to score no, but then in the end, I've landed on unders here, under 2.5 goals. Leicester have had 7 clean sheets themselves, by the way. Between them, they've had 13 wins to 0 so far this season, which is they are the top 2 in the win to 0 department. Yeah, look, West Brom limited Ipswich to 0 shots on target last weekend. I don't think and Cardiff had 1 shot on target. So Leicester aren't going to get a lot of gilt-edged opportunities here, but at the other end, you know, West Brom against Leicester, you know, they're not going to, they're unlikely to score more than 2 goals themselves for sure. 5 of the last 8 West Brom games have gone under. 6 of the last 8 Leicester games have gone under 2.5 as well. So the pattern of form suggests this is 2 really good teams meeting, and that it will be a low-scoring affair. So that's why I picked it.
Okay, under 2.5 goals, 1.9. The second selection, Adrian Clarke, is the team that went up with very impressive Ipswich Plymouth last season. Haven't quite gone to plan, but they're still doing okay above the relegation zone, slightly there.
This is price-based, really, because it's a difficult game to call. Stoke City, I don't really like getting involved in matches involving Stoke City because if they win, they can beat anybody, but then they can lose to anybody as well. They're a very, very strange team. They've been like that for years, really, in the Championship under a string of managers. They're hard to get a grip on, Stoke City. My query here is, why are Stoke favourites? Well, I don't get it. I do not get it at all. Plymouth on home turf, 2.88 outsiders. They've scored 22 goals at home this season, Plymouth Argyle. That's the second highest home tally in the Championship. They love it. They love it down there in Devon. 5 home wins from 9 matches. And look, they're up against a Stoke team that have blanked in 3 of their last 4 matches. They've taken 2 points, by the way. Stoke away. Stoke have got some good scalps higher up the league away from home, but against the bottom half teams, 2 points from a possible 15 away from home. So it's, for me, Plymouth should be favourites here. Stoke have got a couple of key players suspended. Berger's out. Ender Stevens is out. So I just think this isn't
Daniel
my
Johnson
strongest
as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's not my strongest selection in terms of it's Plymouth for sure to win this game, but the price feels absolutely wrong here. So I'm going to get on board with Plymouth, who are more than capable of scoring 2 or 3 goals against any team in front of their own fans. And if they score 2 or 3 here, they'll win the game.
Okay, 2 championship selections: Plymouth to beat Stoke at 288 and under 2.5 West Brom Leicester. Mark, we haven't had Tromso for a few weeks on this podcast, so just take it away.
So good up, Dan. It's the last time we're going to get Tromso on the podcast now for this calendar year, because the season in Norway comes to a conclusion this weekend. Bodo have already been crowned champions a while ago. Arlesons have already been relegated a few weeks back. But there still is plenty to play for, plenty to decide on the final day on Sunday. Second and third secures European qualification in Norway, something that Tromso are definitely striving for. They're third at the minute, a point off second, but only 2 points ahead of fourth. That's Viking, who have got a very presentable game. So Tromso know they will need to get something from their trip to Vålerenga on Sunday if they want to secure a top 3 finish, which would be a remarkable achievement for them based on budget, based on where they've been in the last decade or so. Vålerenga, their opponents are second bottom. Now, the bottom 2 go down automatically, with third bottom entering a promotion relegation playoff. So Vålerenga are in deep trouble right now. They've still obviously got a lot to play for. They are only 1 point away from safety. They are one of 4 teams who could end up in the bottom 2 or bottom 3. So it's very tight down there. So there's a lot riding on this match. But I'm going to back Tromso plus a quarter at 185. It's been a kind of running theme throughout the Norwegian campaign that they are continually being underrated, and they're coming into this match having lost just 7 games all season, including just 3 away defeats this season. So if they avoid defeat here, we make money. This is a Tromso team who have won 10 of 14 away games. They've taken 5 wins and a draw from 6 trips to teams in 10th and below. They have the league's best defence and have scored in 24 of 29 league matches. They are playing away at Vålerenga, who have lost 15 of 29. They've lost 9 of 14 at home and have managed just 2 home victories all season. They've lost 8 from 8 when hosting the top half. And take out their results against Arlesons, who I've already mentioned have been relegated. And they've only won 5 of 27 overall. Yet we can make money at 185 if they fail to beat Tromso. So for me, Vålerenga are artificially short to win this fixture due to their need, their desperation for the points. But it's worth reiterating, Tromso do need a result here too. And as we say in May, just because you need to win doesn't magically make you a much better team, especially when you're playing a higher class opponent. So, I'm happy to beat Tromso here. Just to reiterate, they've won 10 of 14 away, and they're visiting a Vålerenga side who've lost 9 of 14 at home. We're getting 185 plus a quarter. Seems a great bet to me.
Yeah, I'm sold, Mark. I'm sold, and so are the YouTube commenters there. As you can see below, we will go to best long shots, a popular section on the show and a profitable section on the show. We have our record. You see 6 wins and 20 losses. You think the guys have been doing terribly, but when you base it on a £20 stake and include that 2% matchbook bet and exchange commission, you will be up over £200 if you backed all the guys' selections. So, Adrian, we'll start with you just because we covered this game earlier. So, take it away here. It seems a huge price.
It just seems huge, and that's why I've picked it. It's obviously, we know that Brighton have got injuries, but Brighton and both teams to score to win at Chelsea is 7.8, which feels wrong, really. I think Brighton are too long in the market. The price is too high. Every game for Brighton this season has seen both teams score, which means that all 6 of their wins have come when both teams have scored. They are used to winning 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, or whatnot. And against the Chelsea team that are leaking goals for fun, obviously 4 at Newcastle, 4 against City, a couple against Arsenal, a couple against Brentford. You can't rely on them at the back at all. But going forward, Cole Palmer, Raheem Sterling, to some degree, Jackson are in the goals themselves. And Brighton aren't exactly watertight. And with no Lewis Dunk, I think that there's every chance Chelsea score here as well. So both teams to score I'm very confident in. But to get Brighton on side against a side that's won once on home turf this season, at home to Luton Town, just it feels like it's definitely worth the dabble. For 7.8 is a great price for me on Brighton to win this game.
Okay, yeah, seems huge price for me too. Mark, we'll go to Segunda here, and Lagan top of the Segunda. Take it away here, because this seems quite a decent price just looking purely on the table alone.
Yeah, so we touched on Leganés a couple of weeks back. They remain top of Segunda in Spain, the second tier. They're unbeaten in 8, and their underlying metrics suggest that they're in a very fair position as well, because they sit second in terms of expected points overall, second in terms of expected points away from home. If you look at the XG process, they are second overall, but they're also top when playing away. And I looked at their last 4, 8, and 12 game splits. Now, Leganés top the tree for all 3 timeframes in terms of expected points. So they're in form, and they're valid and deserving sort of leaders of Segunda at this stage of the season. But they are 3.3 underdogs away at Zaragoza on Saturday. This is a Zaragoza side that started the season with 5 wins from 5, but they've since really unravelled. Just 1 win in their following 12. They're winless in 8. They've failed to score in 7 of their last 11, and they haven't actually scored in over 7 hours of football. So in 6 of their last 11 matches, Zaragoza have lost and failed to score, with all of those defeats arriving by a 1-0 or 2-0 correct score. So I thought the opportunity to back Leganés to win and under 2.5 goals, which is effectively backing the 1-0 and 2-0 correct score, stood out at 5.5. It's a nice leap on the away price here. Leganés have kept 9 clean sheets in 17 overall. They have the best defensive data in the division, and they're facing a Zaragoza side that's badly lost their way, out of form, struggling to score or even create at the minute. So Leganés plus a quarter was the smart play, but the long shot has to be Leganés to win and not 2.5 goals.
Okay, currently priced at 5.5. We'll move to our best bets records, which have been in profit. 16 wins, 10 defeats here, plus £70 based on that same £20 stake. Mark, we'll go to you. Eredivisie is a league that you haven't gone into much here, so I'm guessing you feel there's a bit of a slowness to look at some of the over 2.5 lines if this is your pick.
Well, it's a very goal-heavy league, Dan. Traditionally, very difficult to find over 2.5 goals at a backable price, a palatable price, because it's such a goal-heavy league. And that's the same been this season. I think it's around 3.3 goals per game. 69% of matches have gone overs. But the kind of mid-table game between Heracles and Sparta Rotterdam at the weekend is giving us an opportunity to back overs at a backable price, around 175, 177. That's despite kind of Heracles being one of the standout sides, 4 goals in the Dutch top flight. In their 11 Eredivisie games so far this season, 10 have gone over, 9 have gone over 3.5, and 9 have also landed for both teams to score backers. The match that failed to hit over 2.5 goals actually ended 1-1. They've managed a clean sheet just once all season, and the only time they failed to score was when they welcomed league leaders PSV Eindhoven. So they've scored twice or more in 4 of their other 5 home fixtures. And I'll just read out your last 7 results for Heracles because they make terrific reading. 1-2-1, lost 4-0, drew 2-2, lost 3-0, lost 6-0, lost 4-1, and then last weekend they won 5-0. So just a terrifically erratic kind of side whose matches are averaging 4 goals per game and an XG average of 3.6. But Sparta aren't quite as crazy. They still have covered the overs line in 8 of 13. 8 of 13 have also seen both teams scoring. Away from home, 4 of 6 have seen BTTS and overs collect. I just thought it was quite interesting that 2 of their 3 clean sheets this season came at home against the bottom 3. And the 3 games in which they failed to score all came against the top 5. So if you kind of eliminate the top and the bottom and just take the middle third, all 6 of Sparta's matches have gone overs and BTTS. So for me, there's more than enough evidence to suggest that overs is trading far too big here. My model suggests over 2.5 goals should be closer to 155, and I think we'll see it trend much further downwards before kickoff on Saturday.
Okay, really like that case. Eredivisie for Mark. And Adrian, take it away with the final bet, the Premier League bet, which is your best bet on the card. Forest Everton.
It's along the same lines, really, as Mark, because the Premier League this season is on course to see more goals than it's ever seen before. Obviously, matches are lasting significantly longer. But yeah, we are on course to break the record, not just break it, smash it, by the way. I think 3.11 goals a game is the current rate. And in terms of both teams to score, which is my pick here for Forest against Everton, it's a 62% strike rate, which is way above the norm in terms of the Premier League. And a lot of games, you look at the games across the Premier League card now, you can't back both teams to score. It's 1.5s, 1.6s. It's really, really, really short odds. You have to combine it. But here, it's 1.86. And, this is, if we start with Everton, the only teams Everton haven't scored against since the start of September are Arsenal, Liverpool, and Manchester United. They're in decent form. We know that. They're playing well. They won at West Ham. They won at Brentford. They won at Crystal Palace as well, scoring goals, multiple goals in all of those games. So they can go to the City ground, in my opinion, and certainly get themselves at least one goal. They've had more shots than Arsenal, by the way, this season, which is just bonkers, isn't it? They've had the 5th most attempts on goal. Whatever they're doing, whatever Sean Dyche is doing, it's kind of working in terms of creating chances. 4 of 6 away games this season they've scored, and even going back to last season, they've scored in 14 of 25 on the road, which isn't bad for a team that's been as poor as they have last season. So Everton can absolutely go to the City ground and score. Forest have scored 2 in each of their last 3 games. Both teams to score has landed in 5 of 6 home matches at the City ground this season, and this is the stat that absolutely swings it for me, because I'm fancying Everton to score. But wait for this. Forest have scored in 23 of 25 home games since the start of last season. They just very, very rarely blank. They're not the most thrilling team in the world. They're not, with Awoniyi out, you might think, they're going to be short of goals. Well, they almost always find the back of the net at least once in front of their own supporters. And I think they can do that again this weekend against Everton. So, both teams to score for me.
Okay, 186 goes against the trends of the Premier League, as Adrian alluded to. We're done. My thanks to Mark and Adrian. Before we go, if you are watching on the YouTube stream, either live or back, if you take 2 seconds to hit that like button, I think we were around the 80s last time out on Monday for the Champions League. Let's get that into 3 figures. That would be much appreciated. But my thanks to the guys, Mark O'Haire and Adrian Clarke. As ever, keep an eye on our social channels for our midweek Premier League content, and we will chat to you next week. But other than that, enjoy the weekend's football, and please do gamble responsibly if having a bet. Bye-bye.